Hello, and welcome to another exciting episode of Tutor I Hardly Know Her.
I feel like we should just record you saying that and we never have to actually do an intro. We could just put exactly that because you say it the same way every single time.
Are you saying I'm predictable, Emily?
A little bit. Sorry.
I don't know. I liked last week's, though, the marmalade.
Yeah, Jeff and I have been talking about marmalade a lot in the last week.
See, that's how I get to you, man. I just plant that seed into your head.
You're a parasite.
The marmalade seed.
The marmalade parasite seed.
Anyway, I'm your host, Garrett.
And I'm
but
your
I'm only
real
one of the hosts because we have another host. Her name's Emily. She's great. Say hi to the people, Emily.
Hi to the people, Emily. Huh. I'm also hilarious.
We also have another host. His name's Jeff. He's great, too. Say hi to the people, Jeff.
Evening.
Good evening.
Good evening,
Good
children.
Jeff is the new host of Tales from the Crypt Keeper.
Bonne nuit.
So what are we talking about today, Emily?
Religion.
Oh my God, yes. This is like right up your and mine wheelhouses because
That Catholic life, though.
Pretty Catholic, weren't we?
That Catholic life, though.
And I'm not.
That's the episode title. We knocked it out right away.
Yeah, I'm actually really excited to talk about this one for a couple of reasons. First, trying to understand the religious changes that happened during Henry VIII's reign is very difficult. Second, somebody contacted me via Twitter and gave me a bunch of really awesome church facts. So
Thanks. Who was that? Let's shout him out.
That was Jillian. So thank you, Jillian. I am super excited. And I think Garrett's going to really enjoy this one part. Jillian knows what I'm talking about.
But yeah, I think since like the beginning of the show, maybe even before the show, I was really excited to talk about religion.
Yeah, it sounds weird, but like it's only because this religious time was so crazy.
Well, it's so significant to Henry's reign, too. That's what makes it really cool.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
And it's interesting to think of what religion in the country was like before Henry and then after Henry. And like they went through hundreds and hundreds of years where nothing changed and it was just Catholic and good and everything was accepted. And then in 80 years, just upheaval and mayhem. So
One man shook it all up just to get a piece of that ass.
Seth Rogen is
King Henry. Oh, God, that's good. Oh, that's good, Emily. I love it.
Thank you.
This is going to be a good one.
Yeah, I agree. So
man, I feel like our episodes are like Star Trek movies. Like every other one's really good.
I think all of our episodes are good.
only count the even numbers. They're the good ones.
I don't know what even number we're on or what number we're on right now.
This is 18, actually.
So it is even numbers.
Oh, yeah. We're doing
Man,
great.
I'm really excited for the 18th Star Trek movie. That'll be a good one.
Okay, Emily, so lead us in. Ease us into the world of religion in the Tudor times.
So I want to first off start by explaining what it was like to be religious in that day and age. Because when we think of religion, we think go to church on Sundays. If you're an asshole, then curse people throughout the week for their own beliefs. But in those times, before the 1530s, religion was an inescapable part of your life. It was as natural as breathing. It was part of who you were. You were not just a Catholic and you were a Methodist. Everybody was Catholic. Everybody followed the Pope. And what the Catholic Church actually had a ton of power. And that led to Henry VIII and his issues. So you need to first understand that it's not I choose to go to mass on Sunday. It is a part of who they were. They were all Catholic. You couldn't be not Catholic any more than you could cut off your arm. You just don't do it.
So back in that day, I would not have been able to weasel my way out of midnight mass on Christmas.
No, in fact, sometimes mass was a regular, like you go a couple times a day.
Oh my God!
I know, and imagine how long. So,
see, I went to Catholic school, and like we had to do that. I used to go to mass 3 times a week, and that was enough.
Yeah, no, I never went to Catholic school, and I went once a week, and I was like, okay, that's sufficient. And then imagine it was all in Latin So for those of you who are not Catholic, the current Catholic Mass has a, much like other services, I'm sure, they have a set schedule when you go in. You always know how it's going to go in. You go in, you pray, you sing a song. There's a reading from the Old Testament. You pray, sing a song. Reading from the New Testament. Pray, sing a song. Another reading from either the book of Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John, one of the books of the Bible. And then the priest says, this is what this means. Go forth and make more Catholic babies and be good people. And then there's communion, and then pray and sing and pray again and then leave.
Oh, and the shaking hands thing.
Yes.
I always remember that part.
Yeah, there's a part
Mr.
where
Shake Hands Man, yeah.
Yeah, you shake hands and you say, peace be with you. And when you
also
grow
with
up
you.
and when you grow up Catholic, whenever you hear may the force be with you, you always think and also with you.
Oh my God, yes, thanks, you too.
Yes. And they actually recently changed it from like
I hate this. Because I had to go to
Me too.
service recently, and I
Me too.
saw this change.
I really
and it made
don't
me
like
so
it.
mad.
It used to be peace be with you and also with you, but now it's and with your spirit. And it's I can't get over it. No matter how many times I do that and with your spirit, it's always to me and also with you.
That's another thing. Growing up Catholic, not going for a while, and then having to go back, and
Oh.
then you see how they've changed the
All
game.
the
and
new
you're like,
rules.
Everybody
whoa,
can tell.
Hold on.
Everybody can tell. They changed the Apostles' Creed, and I was like, "What is
Yeah.
this?" And like, I hadn't gone to church for like a couple of months, and then I went back to visit my parents, and I went with them, and they're like, "We're gonna do the Apostles' Creed now," and I'm like, "Okay, I've had this memorized since second grade," and then they started changing the words, and I was like, What's happening?
Let's see.
This?"
Do I remember the Apostles' Creed? We believe in one God, the Father, the Almighty, creator of heaven and earth, of all that is seen and unseen. Nope, I don't remember.
Hold on, we believe in one God, the Father Almighty,
Almighty,
creator of heaven and earth, all things seen and unseen. We believe in. If I'm with the church, I know it.
Oh yeah.
I'm the awful Methodist who's a creaster.
Yeah.
I only went
Get
to
out of here.
Christmas
We don't want
and
your
Easter.
kind here on this podcast.
Get out, you Methodist.
Where it's like there's
So-
not so much rules; it's more like guidelines for us.
Thank you, Captain
But,
Barbosa.
but Emily, what you're getting at is church is the same every time you go there.
Every
so
time.
you're saying I could just record it and then we would just have it play every time and it would never change.
Except the reading, and then it depends on the church you go to. Like I've been to some Catholic churches that
I'm
are
just-
a
I'm
little
just still
too
salty about what you said
fire and
about me at the
brimstone,
beginning.
and then I've been to some that are a little more. Hey, why don't we all just be good people?
Hey, come on.
Come on, Beetlejuice is the priest. Come on, what are you doing here?
Do a little sitting. It's all right.
So, Catholic Church in those days, the Bible was in Latin, and it was meant so that only the highly educated, which in those days consisted of the nobility and the religious, only they could read the Bible. So only they could say, this is what this means. So it was a one-sided conversation, but it was meant to be like that. But I do know how to say in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit in Latin.
That's way more than I could say in anything Latin because I took Latin for like 5 years.
In nomine Patris et Spiritus no. Patris, Filius and Spiritus Sancti. I actually know that more from
Gracias.
Supernatural.
If there's anything I learned from like anything like horror movie or anything like that, don't read anything in Latin.
Yeah, please, especially when religion is involved.
I draw the line at the fucking Latin. So that is what religion was like before Hank VIII.
Hank?
Oh
Hank's
I forgot
a
about
nickname for Henry.
Okay.
Jeff
That's
and
weird.
I know. Jeff and I want to name our son Henry whenever we have a son, and I get asked a lot if we're going to call him Hank.
This was
And I'm
brought
like,
up in
how
like
is
the
that?
last podcast.
I don't care.
It's been that long.
I don't care. Like, it still bothers me. So anyway, before Hank VIII went a little bit nutso. So let's talk a little bit about some fun facts about the church before we move into Henry's craziness with the church. Are you
Fun
ready?
facts.
Okay.
Fun facts.
Okay, so I'll start with the
Oh, yeah, fun facts. Do you have any crazy Henry facts for us this week?
Because I was dying about a week or so ago from
We're
what I'm
never gonna
assuming
get a fact.
is the sweating
I brought it up
sickness.
as a great idea. It's never gonna happen. It's okay. I love it though.
I know. I mean, I still have fun facts. They're just not all Henry VIII. But I haven't had the chance to read my book because that 1 week of the sweating sickness really destroyed me. But I
Yes,
do
it
have
is.
fun facts courtesy of Jillian. So I'm going to start with talking a little bit about. Hold on, I'm trying to decide on an order because one is just wonderful and you're gonna love it, Garrett. And the other one. Okay, would you rather hear about? All right, let's start with the crazy fact. You ready?
Yes.
Okay. So during that time period and before that time period, you cannot divorce, but you can get your marriage annulled for specific reasons, as we've discussed.
Yet one man decided that that's bullshit.
So, yes, before that one man. Oh, okay, I've got the trailer
Seth
for our
Rogen.
Henry VIII movie. One man decides that he's done with the papist patriarchy.
Coming this summer, till death do I say.
Okay, so, and even still, there are very few reasons that the Catholic Church will allow an annulment. One of those reasons is impotency or the inability to get a boner. So it wasn't enough to. So let's hypothetically say I was married to a guy who I didn't want to be married to anymore. And I had a powerful family who was able to get me a lawyer and get me into a papal court. I could say, well, he's impotent and he can't give me children, which would make the marriage null. That's essentially what it comes down to. If he can't give me children, it's a null marriage. So
His dick don't work.
it wasn't enough to say his dick don't work. It had to be proved that his dick don't work.
Yeah, that takes a long time.
Nope.
9 months, as far as I know.
Nope. Get this.
I'm just visualizing someone
Oh
who's
my
hired,
God.
whose only job is to watch you try to have sex.
They would lock you in a room, your husband in a room with 7 women. And this is the professor, Jillian, her professor sent her this. So I'm going to read it verbatim because it's wonderful.
I like where this is
I know.
going.
This gets a little PG-13 here, guys. The same witness exposed her naked breasts, and with her hands warmed at the said fire, she held and rubbed the penis and testicles of the said John. And she embraced and frequently kissed the same John, and stirred him up insofar as she could to show his virility and potency, admonishing him for the shame he should then and there prove and render himself a man. And she says, examined and diligently questioned, that the whole time aforesaid, the said penis was scarcely 3 inches long, remaining without an increase or decrease.
Bust him out like that.
Right? Well, his dick doesn't work and it's tiny, so get out.
Womp, womp, womp.
So they would lock a guy in a room,
With 7 wenches.
pull his wiener out,
Yeah.
kiss him, and then play with his pee-pee a little bit. And if nothing happened, they're like, well, it's true.
Yep.
You get divorced.
Yep. Pretty much. Welcome to the Catholic
Okay,
Church.
that's, I'll take that as my weird Henry fact of the day.
Well, it is a little bit interesting because at one point Anne Boleyn did tell somebody that Henry doesn't have the virility to please a woman.
Oh,
So ever after there
snap.
were rumors that he was impotent, which would explain why he never got any of his wives past Jane Seymour pregnant and why it took Jane Seymour so long to get pregnant. So, snap.
Yeah.
So that was my fun church fact.
I like that one. That's a good one.
Okay, so now I'm trying to decide how to start. Should I talk about All right, so let's
Jillian,
talk.
thanks for that fact, by the way. That was mwah,
You are so
mwah.
welcome. I thought you'd
Kissing
like
my
it.
fingers. It's beautiful. I loved it.
I thought.
Oh,
You'd
thank
like
God.
It. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Henry's situation with the church. So I think we talked a little bit about this. You know how the Pope was dragging his feet about giving Henry an annulment? Whereas, like, normally it's not that big of a deal to just give a king an annulment because the Pope understands the need for heirs, right?
Now, refresh my memory. What exactly was Henry's reasoning for getting the annulment with Catherine?
His formal reason was that Catherine was the wife of his brother, so therefore she was his sister, so it was incest.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yes. But, and this is the other fact Jillian shared with me that is relevant now. So, Catherine was given, okay, I'm just going to read what she said. When Arthur died and Catherine is sort of in the process of, she's like engaged to Henry, she swears that she and Arthur didn't have sex, and she forever maintained that. She said, he never touched me. I was a virgin when I married Henry, so our marriage wasn't valid, so it's irrelevant anyway. So the validity of her marriage depended on the kind of dispensation Catherine and Henry needed from the Pope. So if she did sleep with Arthur, they'd need a dispensation so that Henry could marry her as his sister-in-law. If she didn't sleep with Arthur, they would need a dispensation that erased the marriage. I believe I'm saying that correctly. So if she didn't bang Arthur, it would be a dispensation from the impediment of public honesty rather than an impediment of affinity in the first degree, which is that they banged and they were related. So England wanted to get the second one, the one where she banged Arthur. They wanted that dispensation. And Catherine and Spain wanted the one about public honesty. So there was a Spanish ambassador, Dr. de Puebla, and he was a twat. He was just a terrible ambassador, and he kind of screwed Catherine over in a lot of different ways. So he ended up getting the dispensation that England wanted. So that ended up harming Catherine later in her trial. So either de Puebla betrayed Catherine or he believed she had sex with Arthur. And this is also used by modern historians to say, well, of course she had sex with Arthur because A, she was a princess and they knew what had to happen, and B, de Puebla got that dispensation. Based on everything I've read about de Puebla, I wouldn't be surprised if he was just a giant awful person. I guess he was very loyal to the English. For a Spanish ambassador, he was all about pleasing the English. So I know a lot of that was like kind of jargony, and I'm sorry. But essentially, there were two different dispensations. Catherine wanted one type, Henry wanted the other, and de Puebla sided with Henry. Got it?
Gotcha.
Got it. Okay. Get it? Got it. Good. Okay. So the whole Pope thing where he was dragging his feet with giving them an answer about the divorce in the late 1520s and early 1530s. So the Pope was in a really, really awkward position. He desperately needed the friendship of England because he was still a political power. Yes, he was the head of the church. Yes, he had a lot of power, but he still had allies and all that stuff. He needed England as an ally because Spain was breathing down his neck and France was breathing down his neck. And then there were the Crusades, a bunch of Crusades happening. And Pope Clement couldn't risk alienating England by saying no. However, Spain didn't want Henry to divorce Catherine because she was a Spanish princess. And they were putting on the pressure on the Pope to say, you can't give them this divorce. So the Pope was stuck between a rock and a hard place. He really didn't have an option, and that's why he kept offering solutions. One of the solutions was that Henry's daughter Mary would marry Henry's bastard son. That was one of the solutions the Pope offered. That very incesty thing. Got it?
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I feel like I'm lecturing you guys more than anything.
We're listening.
I know. I okay, good. Are you actually interested?
You're educating us.
I know. I just want it to be entertaining and not.
So one solution was they said Henry's daughter marries
Henry's bastard.
Mary's bastard son.
Henry's bastard son. Yeah, her half sibling.
Okay.
And then another solution was offered. Henry can marry Anne, or no, Henry could have Anne's children, and Anne's children would be made legitimate. So, like, he was doing everything he could to keep them in the fold, besides granting him the divorce. Now for a little bit about...
I do want to interject. I feel like with how important religion was and how God-fearing these people were, I find it odd that they would try to like fight against the Pope like that.
Actually, I wanted to talk about I was just about to talk a little bit about that.
Oh.
But finish your thought.
Well, to finish my thought, I was going to say that I thought that these people were like super God-fearing and very religious. So like to have them push back against the Pope, Henry especially, that I thought that'd be weird. But you're going to get into that.
I am.
So.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about that. So
Cool. I'm so good at the show.
yeah, you are. I like our singing. So the English people, all right, in England in the 1530s, there were 9,000 churches, 10,000 monks, 1,600 nuns, and 6,000 monasteries. And then there was also Oxford and Cambridge. They were the only universities in England, and they were also religious because the religious and people ended up being the educated ones if you weren't nobility. So a lot of what happened was the English people would have to give money to the churches, and those churches would then give the money to the Pope. So a lot of the people in England were like, they weren't really loyal to the Pope as a person. It was more like, oh, I guess this is just part of being Catholic. But like, they weren't really big fans of giving their money to somebody they didn't know, they didn't see, that didn't have any visible reach in their country. So
They just needed the internet.
what?
They just needed the internet.
They needed to follow the Pope on Twitter. They did have Twitter.
And
they
back
just
then,
sent
Twitter was
pigeons
sending
back and
message
forth
birds.
to each other. They were just like
Carrier pigeons.
clouds of pigeons in the air. So the whole, and then there was.
Could you imagine a social media back in the day where you pay a bard to like run around the countryside and just sing about whatever was on your mind?
And then they're like, got the Black Plague, it's lit. I'm so trendy.
Sad face emoji, poop face emoji.
I can't even.
I have dysentery, poop emoji, poop emoji.
And then like you get a painter to like paint whatever you ate that day.
Food bloggers. I like that idea.
And the bard comes back and he's like, 30 people liked it. I don't know why the bard is always singing.
I'm gonna make this
but
a
that's,
D&D
That's what I
game.
imagine.
I'm gonna make this a D&D game, Gare.
Okay.
This will be a great one.
Next D&D game, we're all bards.
And we're all touring the country trying to get a rock girl label to sign us.
Oh man, that's an idea for a different podcast.
So then the church also had a ton of land in England. They kind of, so because there were obviously so many, 9,000 churches, 6,000 monasteries, they claimed a lot of land that farmers would normally want, and the nobility eventually, well, they always wanted and they eventually got because they collect rent from that.
Mm-hmm.
So the relationship with the church was very interesting for the common people of England. It had its pluses and cons. You never criticized it because it'd be like criticizing your left arm. It just didn't happen. But there was a ton of religious upheaval happening around Europe at that time. Martin Luther had nailed his 95 Theses to the door, like Henry VIII nailed Anne Boleyn to the bed.
Oh,
Hey!
that was good. That was, man, I wish I was right next to you so I could high five the ever living shit out of your hand. That was good.
Thank you. I thought of it on the fly. I was quite proud of it.
Man, we're getting so much better at this show.
It's an even episode.
That's it. I'm so sorry about next week, guys.
It'll be a doozy. I don't know what we're talking. Oh wait, we're talking about illnesses. So I guess we'll come with something. I don't know. We'll see what happens. So
maybe.
The church had a lot to say over
1
things.
hour of marmalade talk.
back to the marmalade. Orange is my favorite.
Okay, no more marmalade talk. Let's get back to the religion. This is a good one. I'm loving it.
Okay, so the church actually had a ton of power over a lot, actually, which is part of the huge problem Henry had with them. The church was the only group that could oppose Henry, realistically, and they did for a long time. They had say over things like holidays for the working, slander and libel cases, punishments. It was pretty astounding how much say they did have. So there was always that political tussle happening between the church and the state. I mean, we still kind of see that stuff now. So because they were the only power that could oppose Henry VIII, it was a threat to him. And so that's a huge root part of why things went to shit. And Henry was a little bit crazy. In the beginning of his reign and as a kid, he was super Catholic, very loyal to the Pope. And I don't know, mental illness, just craziness in general, ambition, something made him stop feeling like that. But he genuinely believed, there's a quote I read and it was along the lines of like, God blesses everything I do. Like he truly believed everything he did, every choice he made was blessed by God. Therefore, every choice was correct.
Once again, how is he any different from Kanye West?
He's not. We haven't talked about Henry the Eighth in a while.
Oh my
this
God!
is
Yeah,
a super Henry.
That was super early. That's a deep cut for all of our longtime listeners.
For those of you who've been listening for
call back to a month ago or two.
And then there was like some people want to think that the church was really corrupt. And it's kind of like your viewpoint. Like if you were opposed to the church politically, yeah, you're going to say they're corrupt. So they had their corruption. The book I'm reading gives it describes it very succinctly. The church is a family. Every family has that drunk uncle. Everybody has the loving uncle. Everybody has the loving uncle who is sometimes the drunk uncle, but they're family and you accept them. So there were those who were corrupt, like Thomas Wolsey, who was Henry's BFF for so long. He
Sam
was
Neill,
definitely,
I love him.
Yeah, Cardinal Sam Neill, he was corrupt as shit. He had a bastard son, and when the kid was like 3, he gave him tons of land, tons of money. It was super corrupt. However, he was also weirdly judicial. He passed laws so that courts were accessible to ordinary subjects and education was easier to access for them. And when one of Anne Boleyn's relatives, who was a raunchy woman, wanted to become the head abbess of an abbey, he opposed it and she didn't. And that brought the Boleyn's wrath down, which kind of spelled the end for him. But it's this weird juxtaposition. Like, yeah, he was corrupt, but also he was judicial. So that's the best way to describe the church. Some of them were corrupt. Some of the churchmen were very enlightened. They weren't all backwards and being like, no, Galileo's gravity thing is bullshit. Like, it wasn't all like that. A lot of them were very encouraging of enlightened reading. There was a famous author, or I think he'd be a theologian.
Theologian.
Yeah, let's go with
Theologist.
that. Whatever. You guys all know what I'm saying. Called Erasmus. And
a smart church guy.
Well, he wasn't a church guy. I don't think he wrote for the church. I just think he was like Thomas More. He was just a humanist who was well respected throughout the enlightened community. And the church encouraged him. They liked Erasmus for the most part. Not all of them. There's always those who were like, no, this is bad. But you need to understand that differentiation as well. Okay, hold on. Oh, and like, you know how Henry VIII burned everybody for heresy, and then Mary the First was like, hey, everybody's a heretic. I'm going to burn y'all. Okay. You guys know that?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Heresy wasn't really a thing that was like sought after before Henry VIII. Like, he kind of just used it as an excuse to get rid of opponents. And then Thomas Cranmer really wanted a reformation, so he used it to get rid of more opponents. But it wasn't really...
So it's more of a political tool than anything.
Yeah, and it wasn't used... Like, churchmen weren't like, I gotta get the heretics, gotta burn the heretics. Like, it wasn't like, it wasn't like Claude...
Somebody take those lines and remix into a song for us, please.
That's okay. I don't need to hear my voice that much.
Gotta burn the heretics. Gotta burn the heretics.
Yeah, it wasn't like Claude Frollo from Hunchback of Notre Dame. It was. They didn't really care about, like, it was just like, eh.
Well, nobody's that evil.
Nobody's that evil. But do you want to know why heretics were burned?
No. Yeah. I was about to say no because I was gonna offer up a thought and I didn't want to say it.
Okay. So burning was a way for them to sample the flames of hell like a delicious appetizer so that they could recant before they died.
Oh man, that's absolutely beautiful. That's another one of those like really good weird facts that I just absolutely love.
And now you're gonna know it. Silly facts about burning people. It's a blast. Okay.
Hot facts.
So let's talk a little bit now about what religion was, what changes Henry invoked during his time. Mm-hmm. So when Martin Luther nailed up his 95 Theses, Henry was still very pro-Pope, pro-Catholic Church. I read somewhere, I don't know how true it is, but I read somewhere that if he had not had to become the king because his brother died, he would have ended up going to the church and being a clergyman of some sort. It's not that weird to think about because Thomas Wolsey was one of the most powerful men in the kingdom, and he was a cardinal. Like, cardinals are called princes of the church. And now that we know how much power the church had, that's pretty lofty. So when Martin Luther put up his theses, Henry wrote a scathing blog about him, and the Pope liked it, retweeted it, and then was like, "You are boss. I'm now calling you the defender of the faith." So that was really cool. I mean, it was just a big win for Henry. Mm-hmm. So, fun fact, because the Pope called him defender of the faith, and this was in the 1520s, Henry used that title for the rest of his life, and Elizabeth I ended up using it. Yeah, it's like they're the kings of Great Britain, Ireland, and France, and the defender of the faith. Supreme head of the church and defender of the faith. So
when did Lutheranism really start to spread?
In the 1520s.
Okay.
And it was weird because like all of these different religious changes that were like sister branches and cousin branches of Catholicism, they all spread around that time. It was just like a wave of different ones. Now, that didn't mean each one was tolerant of the other. Like, there were some crazy ones that were persecuted and wiped out within the first 20 years of their existence.
God, I'd love to hear about some of those. Just the crazy fringe branches of Catholicism.
I have it in the book I'm reading.
Oh my God.
I recently read about a bunch of them, but I can't remember for the life of me what part it would have been in. So I can't look it up now, but I can try and look it up later.
God, this sounds like the closest thing to history porn for me. I love it.
You need to read this book I'm reading. I'll give it to you whenever I finish it.
Emily, I can't read. You know that.
I'll send you the audiobook.
Okay, I'll take that. Who narrates it?
I don't know. I don't even know if there's an audiobook. We'll find it.
Oh.
I can make one.
Jeff just reads this book for 40 hours.
All as Morgan Freeman.
with his own footnotes.
Don't let Jeff read books. Whenever I'm tired and I ask him to read me a book, he always starts it as Morgan Freeman and then segues into my friend Andy Dufresne crawled through 4 feet of fecal
Well, that's how all
matter.
Morgan Freeman impressions go.
What?
That's how all Morgan Freeman impressions go. You know that.
But why does it always have to end with fecal matter?
Henry VIII was my friend. He walked through 5 miles of fecal matter. Why he chose burrito night, I do not know.
So anywho, Henry was defender of the faith. So a couple of the differences so Thomas Cromwell, he wanted a complete reformation. He was like, Catholicism is evil, the Pope is the Antichrist, everything about it is wrong. It's basically just for the rich to get wealthier and yada yada. So a big point of contention was during Mass. The Catholics believed that, so it's the difference between transubstantiation and consubstantiation. And I can't remember which definition is which, but one of them is when they raise the bread.
Are we talking about communion?
Yes.
Okay. Well, transubstantiation is the act of changing the bread and wine into the blood and body of Christ.
So transubstantiation is when they believe it is the literal body and blood of
Yes.
Christ.
Yes, absolutely.
Consubstantiation then is when they believe. So I've been reading so much Tudor history that I can't remember what is history and what is my actual Catholic upbringing. So that's why I always confuse these two. Consubstantiation is when it's symbolic. When they're like, this is
Okay.
bread and it represents Christ's body. So that was a huge point of contention. And like at one point things got so crazy that like simply looking away from the raising of the bread was a sign that you were a heretic and you could get dragged to prison for that.
With as much as I fell asleep in church during school, like I would have been the biggest heretic that I would have known.
You would have been burned so quickly.
See, we only did the communion thing at my church, like for special occasions.
See, that's weird to me. I've heard of people who are like, we had it once a year, and I'm like, what do you mean once a year?
What's really weird then for me is like, well, they actually use actual wine. When I was a kid, it was just grape juice.
I mean, we got wine when I was in 2nd grade, and I had my first communion. Garrett, did you have wine at your first communion?
Yes.
Yeah, it was just a thing.
What kind of wine is it? Like a Chianti, a Malbec?
I think it's a red blend. I'll ask my dad.
A Riesling?
My dad's one of the ones who does the communion thing. So I'll ask him, and I'll see if he can start slipping us in some Coppola, because I much prefer that.
You know, that reminds me of a personal story. I don't know if well, we can cut it out if
No,
we don't want to.
I want to hear it. I want to hear it.
What? Okay. It's not even about me, but it's not really about me.
I don't care. I want to hear
So
it.
we come back from Mass one day, me, my mom, and my brother. My brother was an altar boy, and he had served at that Mass. And we're all sitting at the kitchen table just kind of talking after church, and I look at his pants, and I look in his pocket, and I see he's got a little something sticking out of there. I said, Zach, what is that? And I like reach over to grab it. He goes, Garrett, no! And I pull out, and he pulls out at the same time, and then it splits open a huge roll of communion wafers.
Like a roll of coins roll?
Yes.
He stole the communion wafers.
Not just one package, he stole 2.
What was he going to do with it?
Eat them.
Have a snack, obviously.
It's not even... Mom, do you have any Cheese Whiz? That's when he starts mixing them with Doritos, so he's got nacho cheese flavored communion wafers.
Can we get some cool ranch on these
nacho
wafers?
cheese flavored Christ.
Did you...
I believe that this is the body of Christ, and I also believe it tastes really fucking good.
He's just drinking Mountain Dew and eating nacho flavored communion wafers, playing Call of Duty. What did your mom do?
She was pissed.
Did she make him go to confession?
I don't think that.
Oh, God damn
She was,
it. I
she was
really
pissed,
want
and
to
she was just
hear.
like, "Oh my God, Zachary."
I really wish he'd gone to confession because I love the idea of a priest sitting down and being like, "Bless you, child. What have you done?" And he's like, "I stole 2 rolls of communion wafers in the prepared."
So that's where they went.
Fuck. I'm so glad you shared that story. I'm telling everybody in my family.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Was it ever? Did you ever like the taste of the communion wafers?
No.
It's just bland crackers, right?
Yeah.
See, it was kind of a novelty for like me and my brother. My grandma, she would buy it from the church because you can buy like the individual wafers. Actually, this is another thing I gotta bring
25
up.
cents each.
You could buy them in like squares. It's like the same. It's like the same
Yeah.
type of, just like big old rectangles, and
Yeah.
you can just mow down on them, snack on them.
I've seen communion bread where it's actually bread, not the wafers.
See, I like that.
It's weird to me. It's just that Catholic thing is so drilled into me.
But anyway, my other story is one day I was at work and I was really bored.
And you're like, man, I wish I had some communion wafers.
Well, I went on Amazon just to see if you could buy them, and you can totally buy them in like a pack of 300 for like $15. I was like, man, that's a steal. and then like later that day, I went on Facebook and I'm like looking, they have those like targeted ads based on what you've been searching for, and they just like 30 ads for communion wafers. I thought it was really weird.
Oh, that's a
I was
great
like, how do
story.
they know? Oh yeah, my internet.
There's like a church I think there's a factory in Ohio that makes all of the communion wafers for like North America.
Oh
like
my
it's,
God, do you want
there's
to break
just like
in there?
one
They're probably rolling in
factory
it.
that's just like stamping out circles.
Gotta
of,
go up to my brother and say, Zach, you want to pull off one last heist?
and then we get
This will
Nicolas
be the biggest
Cage.
score
He's
of
like,
your life.
I'm gonna steal.
Once we
the
do this, we're out of the
communion
game.
wafer." This is a good one. I love this episode so far.
Oh man. Yeah.
So back to Henry VIII.
okay, back to.
You good?
I'm just thinking, me and my brother going on a. It's another movie idea. We're going on a heist in the biggest communion wafer factory in America.
No. Here's what you do. You build your own factory, don't advertise any of it, sabotage the other communion wafer factory, and then be like, oh, we were just turning on the lights to our own. And then you guys have a monopoly on the communion wafer business.
Oh man.
That'll be good. So back to Henry.
Back to the facts.
Okay, so Henry was the defender of the faith, and then he wasn't. He declared himself the supreme head of the church in 1531. And then a year later, he was like, all right, I demand all of the clergymen accept me as the head of the church. And it was called the Submission of the Clergy. And then just to prove that this was more political than religious, Henry did not have any religious opposition to the Pope besides that he was the head. There was something called an act in restraint of annates. I think it's annates. So what that did was it stopped all but 5% of the payments that had been going to the Pope, and it sent him to Henry. Henry VIII's father, Henry VII, he left him a very big treasury, lots of money. His father was a miser. I mean, he spent decently, but he didn't overspend. And Henry,
I would think that if you were king, like you would never have to want for money.
No, they do. Henry blew through it all multiple times. He was broke. And
This is a discussion for another episode, but
this
I
is
like
no,
where this
this
is
is
going.
relevant. This is relevant to this.
Oh, then please continue.
So, in 1533, he declared his marriage to his church, his posse. They declared Henry's marriage to Catherine annulled, and he married Anne Boleyn, and that was declared valid. A year later, the Act of Supremacy was passed, and that said every English subject had to declare an oath of loyalty to Henry and to Anne Boleyn in their marriage. We all know that didn't last, and in 1536, the dissolution of the monasteries happened. He divorced Anne, yada yada. So the dissolution of the monasteries, Henry took all of the wealth from a ton of monasteries. He didn't go after every single one. Some years he just went after smaller ones. Some years he went after the bigger ones. And
These are the Catholic ones?
yes, they're all monasteries, all Catholic. There's no
Okay.
non-Catholic religious house. So he dissolves the monasteries, takes the money, and it's a ton of money he gets from all of this religious change. He's actually getting tons of money. It should have covered his debts, but he kept spending. He built the palace. Nevermore, never will. Something with a cheesy name. Oh, none such palace, because there was none such as this palace. Henry apparently was really bad at making jokes. So he just blew through the money. Wars, battles, like the rough wooing, that cost a lot of money. His voyage to Bologna, that cost a lot of money. He was terrible at keeping it. They were in debt from virtually the 1530s until Elizabeth I's reign. And it was mostly Henry. So the 10 articles were introduced in 1536, and those were just 10 pieces of information that Henry said, I want this to be the basis of the religion, and that was turned into the bishop's book, which was the basis of the religion. It was essentially Catholic. It was essentially Catholicism. Like, there was not much difference. I think there were a couple of tiny differences, but that was pretty much it. In 1538, the English allowed the translation of, or there was an English translation of the Bible allowed to be in churches. And then Cromwell started doing shit because Cromwell wanted a real religious change. But it was called the Set of Injunctions that discouraged Catholic superstition. So they thought like having the cross, that was worshiping an icon instead of worshiping the person. And he just considered Catholicism full of superstition, so he wanted it eradicated.
I can definitely see that.
Yeah, I can see how people think that.
So, is it safe to say that because of all this is why we have Bibles in English now?
Not because of it, but it's a big part of it. Yeah.
Okay.
The English Bible thing, the fight had been there for a while. It was just very few acted on it.
Okay.
So then in 1539, there was the Act of the Six Articles, and that essentially just reaffirmed the whole Catholic religion. It was just like, yep, everything you grew up believing, we still got, except I don't want the monasteries there anymore because I want their money, and I'm still the head of the church. And then in 1543, the King's Book was published, and that was just more Catholicism. So essentially during Henry VIII's reign, Henry wanted the Catholic religion, but he wanted to essentially be the head of the church, and he wanted to keep the church's land. Cromwell, his BFF, was trying his hardest to avoid that happening, but he failed miserably, and then he was beheaded. So that is where Henry VIII dies, is with the church being kind of Catholic, and then Edward, his son, being like, no, I want everything Protestant, and he went crazy. He was the one who actually called the Pope Antichrist, if you remember that.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a Henry VIII fun fact.
Oh my God, yes.
Okay. So there were some bishops who opposed Henry VIII's divorce to Catherine, and they were pretty vocal about it, and they refused to accept Henry as the supreme head of the church, all that stuff. One of them was Bishop Fisher, and in the early 1530s, he was poisoned. He was with a bunch of his, bishopy friends, his religious buddies, and the whole group was poisoned. Bishop Fisher had taken a small bite of the food, so he didn't die. Like, 7 or 9 other people did die. So a lot of people believed that Henry VIII had given the order to have him poisoned, and Henry VIII reacted by going to Parliament, declaring that poisoning a person was high treason, and he kind of was being really pompous about it, and that raised people's suspicion. They're like, all right, well, you're being really defensive, so now we're kind of thinking you really did do this. So you want to know the punishment for the person who had actually poisoned them? We don't know on whose orders it was, but the cook had poisoned them. Do you want to know what his punishment was?
What was his punishment?
I want you to try and guess, because it's a little bit of like poetic justice for this.
He has to eat the food that was poisoned.
No, it's crazy.
Aw.
Think Henry VIII crazy. Poetic justice for a chef.
Eat until you die.
No.
Damn it.
He has to cook the bodies
No.
of the dead people. Damn.
Do you want to know?
Yes, please.
He was deep fried alive.
Oh, man, yeah.
He was lowered into a vat of boiling oil.
Did they at least put some, like, panko flakes on him or some
I don't
breading?
know.
Was it tempura?
Tempura. Tempura Roos. Nope. His name is Roos, by the way.
Huh.
Maybe that's a reference in Game of Thrones that I never realized until now. Roose Bolton. Although I guess he didn't deep fry or get poisoned. So anyway,
All right.
that is that for Henry VIII's religion and the breaking of the church. Did it live up to your expectations?
Yeah, I think it was great. We had a lot of good talk about this.
Well, it's
Yeah.
like to talk about how, like, before all Henry VIII, it wasn't a much of a issue with monarchy and the churches, where like Henry is the one who started causing all these issues, and then even his children all started going on their little religious tirades.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Henry.
Actually, Elizabeth was kind of the most tolerant.
So
Yeah.
so
Less
I
killing.
have a couple notes written down here that I just want to. I don't know if you can answer them for me or not. So most recently, did Henry really run the church? Was he like part of the day-to-day like running of what should be going on?
Run
or
sermons.
No, he did write. So he did write some pieces, and then like he'll write something, and then he'll give it to one of his lackeys, and one of those was turned into, I think the bishop's book was turned into something that was based off something he'd written, and they kind of changed it up a little bit, and then it was published, and then 6 months later Henry read it, and he's like, "What the fuck is this shit?" So he kind of, it was almost like he was the manager where he made everybody do the work, and he was like, "Okay, I'll just approve of it all."
Give this Henry seal of approval here.
Right?
Yeah, because it seemed like breaking away from the church and forming your own church is a lot of work to go through just to get laid.
I mean, it's easy.
But it's a really nice romantic gesture.
It's easy if you're a tyrant.
Baby, I love you so much. I'll make my own religion for you.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah.
break away from the Pope for you, babe.
I want to love like that.
So it's like some high school bullshit.
Well, he wrote their names with hearts around them, so he was very high school.
On a big tree, and it just kept going around until it got to the eighth wife. She's like, "Wait, what the fuck's with all these other hearts with names in them?"
He's like, "Don't worry
Oh,
about
come
it,
on,
baby."
baby. That's not me. It says HVIII.
I don't know who this Havi is, but not
He
me.
just shrugs his shoulders. So how would somebody become part of the clergy or become like a priest in those times? Is that something you were just kind of born into, or they're like select boys? It's like, okay, this is going to be a church one, or could you?
Well,
just
it's
say,
kind of like
hey,
you're talking about if
I wanna
Henry
do
didn't
this.
become king, he would have
Yeah.
probably become part of the church.
Yeah, I think there are a couple different ways. So
you kind of make it like a career decision.
Some families would send their kids away to churches because they couldn't afford to raise them. And an example of that is the Pole family, and they were actually royal cousins who, if Henry VII hadn't been king, they would have been in line.
Oh, wow.
So Margaret Pole had a couple of sons, and then her husband died, and her youngest son, Reginald, she couldn't feed him. She couldn't take care of all the kids. Some of them were with cousins or siblings of hers. Some of them were old enough to be part of Henry's entourage, but she couldn't care for Reginald. So she sent him to the church, and he ended up becoming a cardinal. So I don't think it was restrictive, but I can't promise that like any just a poor person could walk in off the street and say, I want to be. But I also at the same time I do think there was I think the church allowed a lot of upward growth. Here's an example. Thomas Wolsey, he was a blacksmith's son. People hated him.
Huh.
Because he was an upstart. He was actually despised by the nobility because he was a nobody's son, and he ended up being a cardinal and being the Henry VIII BFF. So you could, anybody could become...
Well, I can see why there might be it'd be difficult because you talked about how those who were, really heavy in the church anyways had to be educated.
But they were, it wasn't you have to be educated to join the church. It was you join the church to get educated.
Yeah.
The only two universities in England, Oxford and Cambridge, they were religious houses. They were religious institutions.
I mean, it seems like a good way to get a steady job and
It is.
an education.
It is.
It's just a lot more
But then
it's
there's-
a more severe dedication of your life to, I feel like.
Yeah. I'm sure that there were some restrictions.
Because not just a job. It's not like blacksmith where it's
No, it's
like
a life.
you mill it and you're done. Yeah, it's like there. Yeah, it's a whole life
Yeah.
you're
So-
putting into it.
I bet you there were some... Sorry. I bet you there were some restrictions, but not too terrible.
Okay. And if that's all you have for that, I have one more question. Was this also the time where altar boys were castrados?
No, it wasn't altar boys who were castrados. It was choir boys who were castrados.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Maybe.
All right. It
I
wasn't a
think-
real question. It's just a silly thing I thought of.
Did he? I don't know. I've actually never really looked that up. But it would have been the choir boys. And
I couldn't think of choir boy. I wrote down altar boy.
That's okay. I knew what you meant.
Boop. And
I got
that's
you.
all of my questions.
And that's all my answers.
All right. Well, that's all of the show then.
Goodbye.
See ya. Later.
Peace.
So we hope you guys enjoyed listening to this episode as much as we enjoyed recording it.
And
Yeah.
we're sorry it was delayed, but we want to make
Oh
sure
my
Emily
God.
didn't die of the sweating sickness.
Yep, which Garrett will
Yeah,
teach you
Emily
about
was
next week.
dying. I was working my ass off.
Yeah, Garrett
It
was.
was-
And
yeah.
I
It
was
a whole
helping.
lot.
Garrett was. Jeff was taking care of me. He was doing such a good job. So I am sorry. I really wanted to do this episode. I just couldn't. I was sick for 8 days.
When we were originally going to record, it would have just been Emily saying really. It probably would actually pretty entertaining to hear the loopiness. She probably would have been just spouting out.
No, it would have been horrible.
You know what? I'm
So-
glad we waited though, because I think that this is once again
This
one of
ended
our
up being
stronger
really good.
episodes.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, me too. I'm glad.
This will go down in the annals of history.
Oh.
Don't correct me.
No, I wouldn't dream of it.
All right, so we did churches this time, and then next time we're going to cover what?
Illnesses and medicine.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought that would be proper, seeing as how
I had the sweating
We-
sickness.
Emily's been dying. I might be dying
We're all dying on
of
the
illness.
inside.
We're all dying. How morbid.
Well, it's the truth.
To be fair, we're talking about a bunch of dead people, so
That's true.
We can at least sue them. I know that.
Claim their wealth.
Emily, how can people find us?
Facebook at Tutor I Hardly Know Her. And thank you for all of our recent fans. It's been really awesome seeing our fan base grow. And I really enjoy seeing your comments and your kind words.
And people sending us suggestions, like tagging
Yeah.
us in either facts or videos
Yeah.
or articles.
my
Yes,
God,
it's
that
so cool.
picture of Henry's armor with the frickin'
Oh, the cod piece.
That was hilarious.
that was amazing.
That was wonderful.
Who sent that in? Do you know off the top
I
of your
can
head?
find it if you give me a second.
You can also find us on Twitter at Tutor Know Her.
Yes.
At Tudor, know her.
Correct.
And
I don't really follow the Twitter as much just because I'm not really a Twitter guy. However, I saw on Facebook we passed 100 likes.
We
Which
did.
it's not
Yeah.
it's not a lot, but it means something to us.
For us, that's great.
And I really want to thank Jillian for sending me those church facts because I wasn't quite sure what we were going to talk about this week until you sent me that. So I really, really appreciate it. It was great.
I'm actually looking on not Facebook, the iTunes feed right now, and if you search iTunes podcasts for Tudor, we're the first thing that pops up. So that's cool.
Yay us. I can't find who
Yay
posted the picture. Give me one more second again. It was Brendan Myhill. Thank you, Brendan.
Thank you, Brendan.
I appreciate you showing us Henry's codpiece. Oh, I also found leggings that were based off of Henry VIII's armor, and I'm totally gonna buy them.
Nice.
I'll find the link and I'll share it because I think everybody wants Henry VIII's pants.
We all wanted Henry VIII's pants.
I was excited
So,
when I found a Henry VIII action figure for Emily.
Yeah, Jeff got me that, and it made me feel better.
So what else is there to do? Like us on Facebook, like us on Twitter, tell your friends about us, rate and review us on iTunes. That helps a lot.
Yes, we appreciate it,
So
guys.
until then,
Divorced,
Divorced,
beheaded,
died,
divorced,
divorced,
beheaded,
survived.
survived. Goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye. Goodbye.
Bye.
We could just record that and play it over at the end, and we never have to do it again.